Alexis, I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm so excited to have you on here.
Yes, I'm happy to be here. Thank you for asking me.
Of course. You know you're my girl, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
There will be edits. OMG.
No, they should know the real you. Talking about y'all. I don't know where that came from. But anyway, for those of you who don't know the relationship between me and my sister here, this is my first cousin, Ijeoma. We call her IJ. Her mother is my dad's older sister. And so I call her Big Mommy, but it's my aunt. And that is how me and my cousin are related. And we grew up in Georgia together. We saw each other a lot. You know, our family's super close. We lived like 10 minutes away from each other. And yeah, it was just good times. For those who don't know, my sister here is a lock queen. So you're the biggest advocate for locks that I know.
I
know you love your locks down. I don't think you ever plan on changing your look.
Not anytime soon.
Right. So I want to know why you started the journey and what would you say to somebody who is thinking about starting locks?
I started the journey 2014. So it'll be 10 years this year. I've been natural since maybe early 2000s. And when I was living in Atlanta, it started to become a thing, sister locks, in the early 2000s. It was getting popular. I would see a few women and I'm like, oh, that's an interesting look. And I went to the point of going to a consultation once I started to see more women with it. And I was like, I love the length. I love how small they were. They were still just very feminine. And, when at that time when you were thinking of locks, you were thinking of dreadlocks. Like they just looked just dreadful. But these were, they looked so neat. And I did the consultation. And even then, in the early 2000s, they were an investment. So I was like, nah, that's not something I want to do right now. But when I came here to Michigan, I saw this one sister. I mean, she was like regal in her locks. I saw her, we were kind of passing, and the way she just carried herself and the locks just added a little something. And I was like, you know what? Enough is enough. Let's go and do this consultation again. And so I did it. I was committed to it. And 9 years later, I'm rocking it and I love it. I tell people it's one of the best decisions I've made in my life because, I have thick hair and I was spending 3 hours on a good day styling my hair. Like, it's just too much time. I got other things to do. So once I did this, it's just low maintenance. Just one less thing to worry about in life. So yes, if someone were to ask me, why should I get these locks? People are wanting like the versatility. They want to change things up. It's too much of a commitment. And you can do so many things with locks. And there are just so many more locticians out there who this is their pride and joy, and they love doing what they're doing, and they love to make people look good and feel good about their crown. So, I mean, just do it.
Well, you are beautiful and gorgeous and just a queen in every sense of the word.
Thank
you.
So
I love you.
I appreciate you. I love you as well too. Yes.
Okay, cool. All right. So my first question is, so what made you want to be a guest on this podcast, on this topic specifically? Because I will share with the folks that I just texted you one day. And I asked you, would you be open to being on the podcast, right? And then you said, I'm so honored that you asked. And that's not just yeah, sure. That's a, very particular response. So I would like to know, why you are honored to be on this podcast today.
Yes. First of all, and I think I told you too, and I used the word, I think I used like trepidation or something. I was like, I'm a little fearful, but you know me, I'm quiet. I'm to the corner. I don't like the spotlight. I'm introverted. I'm more of a listener than a talker. And so I didn't know. And, this topic in particular, it's been something that's been on me for years now. And so it's one of those things where I don't know if I have anything to say, but I was honored in that when we talked, you said that you wanted to, I think something of the nature of wanting to hear my side of grief and how I've been handling the passing of my mother. And so it was an honor for you to feel like you can glean something from what I'm experiencing. And so I felt honored in that way. And I think a lot of your listeners so far, they have been talking about how the hesitation. But yet, because of who you are, Damisi, that there's no, like, of course I'm going to do it. I'll do it for you just because you make people feel comfortable. You're easy to talk to, easygoing, and never have I felt any judgment from you when we talked. And it's just always like, we don't always talk a lot, but when we do, it's laughs, it's a good time. It's the heaviness that's just off, and it's just, and so I'm looking forward to that because like you said, it's a hard topic. It's hit close to home. And so, and it's something that I haven't talked about my experience in a long time. So I'm honored to talk to you about it and also kind of get where, your experience too as well. And I'm excited. I'm excited to see where this goes.
Thank you. I appreciate you. And yeah, I'm excited too. I'm so happy to have you here. This is the ministry as of right now.
Amen.
And so where it can go. And yeah, we ain't really dug too deep into this, like me and you. I don't know if you've dug into this with my sisters, but I know, like, obviously when everything happened, we were there together, but like at the funeral and stuff, but but we didn't get too deep into things. And all these years later, then Bolu, and now I think I'm like feeling like I can like be more bold to talk to you about things and ask about things just because, like now I have a little bit of experience. And obviously, like, Big Mommy dying was like a very big thing for me too, but it's nothing like you losing your mother. And so I'm just, I think that this is needed just for understanding and openness in our family. And so, this is really important to me. So I'm very happy to be having this conversation. And the first question is, just kind of share as little or as much as you want about like the overview of your experience.
I didn't have much experience with loss, with, someone close to me passing before my mother. So it's kind of odd that the first person I would really have that experience would be someone that meant the world to me. My mother was diagnosed with AML, acute myeloid leukemia, in 2008. She had just moved from Georgia. I want to say 2006. I followed close after that around 2007, and then she was diagnosed in 2008. And she was dealing with the disease for 7 years, on and off. She had about 4 years of remission. So, and it was a good 4 years in that she was able to do things with her life, that she had goals. She went to school, did a second career, which was then nursing. She was a nurse for a few years. And that remission period also allowed her to work and even try to get a master's. So, but for those 7 years, it was a lot of in and out of the hospital, a lot of pain, suffering. Even when she was in remission, there was always that fear of the relapse. And I think that was always in the back. She was quote unquote healthy, but I think she always knew at any time that disease would rear its ugly head, which eventually it did. So my experience with grief is really not the passing of mommy, but it was more the journey to get to that passing, because it was so prolonged. It was long. It was a long 7 years. And it's really unfortunate because a lot of the memories that I have of her, they are the memories of the last 7 years. And everything preceding that is like, it's very faint. And that's part of my grieving too. It's like, I don't really remember the healthy, because the sickness, the suffering, all that trauma of just watching my mother fight for a life every single day of that 7 years is what overshadowed everything else. And that is what I grieve. And that is what, for me, even her passing, when she passed, it was like it was a relief. And that is the emotion that I remember feeling the day she died. It was the literal no more suffering, no more pain, literally, because that was what those years were about. And so that her passing to me was more like, and she didn't want to die. She was not ready to die at the end. She was praying for God's healing. And it wasn't even a cure, but it was healing, complete healing. And she didn't receive that. She didn't get that, and that was not her story. But at the end, it was a relief. It was almost like a gift to no longer see your loved one going through this prolonged pain. And so when I speak of grief, it's really those years of seeing what cancer can do to somebody.
Yeah. Ooh, that, hearing you say that makes so much sense. Like being front and center for that entire time and being her daughter and loving her so much and looking up to her, and what you said about those 7 years being the most salient memories in your mind, as opposed to the many, many years prior to that. Like, that's heartbreaking. I can't imagine how you would be able to ignore that being so front and center as a constant part of your life for all of that time.
Yes. It's, I don't want to put a negative notion into everything that went on, because there were some good times. There were some times where, we'd sit together and, we'd pray, we'd laugh. She was very vulnerable with me, and that she would tell me her dreams, and she would open up to me about what she wants to do with the future. So there were a lot of positive and, great memories that I had during that time. But unfortunately, I have to reach to find those, because, the negative, sometimes it just kind of overpowers. And you don't want to get stuck into that, because it will swallow you up. It is all consuming sometimes. So, I reach for those positive times. And I mean, and she was a great person. She was a great woman. She had beautiful, radiant smile, funny in her own dry humor.
Funny in her own.
She was funny. But
we had so many running jokes. Your mom, and she did. It's like she's not really trying to be funny. She's just being herself. That quote will just come out of her mouth real quick.
She was quick.
So how did you do it? Because it was just you for much of that time.
Yes, for a majority of it was me. My dad, thank God for my dad. He did come and he did rescue me a few times when I needed rescuing and stuff. But it's family. And, we grew up in a tight-knit family. And you grew up experiencing and seeing, looking at it back, hindsight, a lot of sacrifices that they made for us, our parents. And it's almost like, it's just part of being family. You do what you have to do. And also it was almost convenient too, in that, like I said, I was living with my mother at her time of diagnosis. So it was almost like, I'm here, might as well, right? Throughout that 7 years, there were times during that 7 years where during this time, I was 23, so it was a lot of my 20s, early 20s into my late 20s. I am still a kid. I want to go out, have fun. I want to live life. During the probably halfway through the 7 years, maybe about 4 years in, I had to get away. So I did. I went to Chicago. I went close enough, but far away where I didn't have to deal with it all the time. But what was ironic was that I still had to deal with it. And it was harder to do it in Chicago. So I was commuting back and forth. And that's when I thank God for my dad, because my dad, for that majority of the time when I was gone in Chicago, he was there helping take care of my mother. But in this whole process, I don't have any regrets. But what I do have is the guilt of leaving. And I know when I talked to her about it, I could see the disappointment, and not in me. I want to say not in me, but maybe the disappointment in the choices that I'm making. Like, that to me, she's thinking, that I need you at this time. So why are you choosing to leave? But I needed to get away, and I saw no other way. That was my escape, and I did it. But because at the end of the day, I couldn't completely just leave her situation. There were times during that time where she was in the hospital, admitted. So I'm working my shifts at the hospital in Chicago. Then I'm taking the train or whatever back to Michigan to spend the next couple of nights and days in the hospital there, only to have to come back. So 4 months, and I was like, okay, enough. I need to come back home. And so I did. I went back home and, just figure the rest of that out until the tail end, until the end of her life. So caretaking for anybody, no matter who it is, it's very difficult. And so you have to take respite, and it's just not just like once. It has to be almost like a routine where you have to schedule those times to take a break. And it's like a complete break where you have someone to help relieve you of, your duties. And so that's my advice to anybody who finds themselves in that role, is to take the time for yourself, and completely for yourself, because you'll need it.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear you say that you have no regrets, but you do have guilt, and that's very real. It's one of those things where it's like, who wouldn't feel guilty? That's your mom. You were with her all the time, but then you had to get away. And like you said, like, you saw no other way out. So like, as a 23-year-old, 24, 25, whatever, like, you don't know how to, like, you weren't given a manual on this. You were kind of sprung. The situation was sprung on you, and you were doing your best. And you also knew that, like, you were not doing well. So you had to do what you had to do. And so I'm proud of you for making that decision. I can't imagine being in your position. And I can imagine I would feel all the same things you would have felt. And I don't know that, like, I just don't know.
Yeah.
So all you can do is have grace for yourself. And I'm glad that you had that experience. Now you can compare it to staying there, and you wouldn't have known you might have resented, you might have felt so many other things that would have been worse off. So
that's true. Yes. That's a good point. Good point of view. Yes, for sure. Yeah.
I mean, and then for you to turn around and give that same advice to someone who might be in that same predicament of, like, take time for yourself. Like, it's almost like, yeah, you really don't regret it, because you also know that's what you needed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So when we talk about trauma and talk about, like, being in front of something every single day, something that is watching, so like someone you love so dearly, like you said, fight for her life. I don't, for that long. I was in the hospital with Bolu for a week, and then I was at home with him for another, like, week and a half. And that was the most difficult thing I've ever done, seeing Bolu in the state that he was, right? So after that experience, I've thought about you, and I'm like, no, no. So yeah, I'm so grateful for you. I'm grateful that you were there with your mom. I know that she was grateful for you, and regardless of the, that's your mom. So y'all have your own relationship, and she's going to feel the way she feels. But I know that she's grateful that she had you, and you helped her out so much, and God bless you. And for those who may not know what you do today, share with us what you do, because I know that one, has affected the other, and the places you've worked, and the, things that you've done. So share with us what you do and the motivation behind it.
Yeah, I am a nurse. The field that I'm in, we see patients in hematology oncology. As much as I've tried to run away, especially hematology oncology, just because of my experience, and I think I just always find my way back to it, and I think that's God telling me, you still have work to do. So, and that was actually my first job out of school.
I didn't realize that, so you said as much as you've tried to run away, like, you've always been pulled back. I thought it was an intentional thing of you, like, if you're like, yeah, I want to work in oncology because of what I've been through, because of what I've seen. But you're saying that it wasn't necessarily intentional?
Man, it was the first job. It was the first people that took me, because in nursing, they look for people with experience. In any other field, you would rather have people with experience. But how am I going to get experience if no one is hiring me?
Okay, the age-old question.
So it was, in nursing though, my mom was a nurse, and just seeing, and it makes sense now. But, seeing the nurses, talking to the nurses, I kind of had an idea that, one of my best friends in college at the time at Georgia State, she was in nursing school there. And, she talked about the bedpans and all I knew nursing to be at that time was poop and vomit. And I was like, and blood. And I was like, I don't want anything to do with that. Like, But then when I was with my mom and actually seeing that, oh, nursing isn't just, these bodily fluids. It's a lot more. Yeah. And so seeing that up close, I was like, okay, yeah, I can do this. And so, yeah, that's job in oncology was the first people that took me.
How does your grief manifest today in year 9 as opposed to year 1 or 2?
Year 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe even 5. Year 1, it was, so when she passed, I was busy because, I'm taking care of all of her fears now. And it was kind of like a distraction. I took off of work. I was working per diem at this hospital. So I'd only work like maybe once or twice a month. And for a while, I want to say almost like 2 months, just to be able to pack things up, take care of my mother's affairs. And I was distracted for a little bit in the beginning. The nights were the hardest because you're sitting there with your thoughts. It's a solo journey. And you have the support. You have people that are checking in on you, wanting to know that you're doing well, and they have the best intentions. But at the end of the day, it's you and your thoughts, and it's hard. So it was devastating. Year 1, year 2, and it's one of those things where you would get in a state of depression on anniversary dates, and you would try to figure out, why am I feeling this way right now? And then you realize, oh, her birthday is coming up, or it's Mother's Day soon, and it's trying to navigate those holidays without her, just not having her around. And then all of a sudden you're not as frequently depressed, or the depression is not as intense as it was. And everything is like always like a gradual shift. To me, I never really can pinpoint when I finished one phase and entered the next of just acceptance. But things became lighter. And it wasn't so hard to, especially around those times, to, go through those difficult anniversary times. And so that was one of my biggest obstacles was, now I have to do this alone, And so now, I still think of my mother every single day. There's not a day that goes by that I do not think of her. And I can talk more freely without being so emotional. I can make better sense of how I'm feeling. But it takes time, and you just have to, and I'm not speaking for anybody but myself, and this is my own unique experience, but I just realized, just not having my mother, it's just gonna be, and my mom was young when she passed. It's not like she was in her 80s or 90s. I mean, it would still be difficult. She passed 7 days before her 57th birthday, so it was still, it's devastating. So, and at that time I was 30, and I still thought I was a child. and that was my biggest fear of losing her, was how am I going to navigate this world now without my guidance? Because I went to my mom for a lot of things, and she came to me and helped me through things. And, some of the things were unsolicited, but it was the fear of doing life by myself. And it was like, now I just got to wing it because I still don't know what I'm doing, So she was my guidance, and I think that fear is what I felt in the beginning of, how am I going to live now? Like, you get through it, one day at a time.
Absolutely, yes. And looking back to how you felt then, who's going to take care of me, who's going to be my guide. And now I know you say like you still don't think you have things figured out, but like how do you think you've done in navigating the world?
I think I'm doing pretty well, actually. And it's a thing now of, okay, now you fend for yourself. Now you have to go out there and look for resources that are going to help you navigate. And that's, reading the Bible is a great guidance. And so resources like that, and we have all these motherly figures around us. For me, I was kind of seeking another mother at the time. But, no one can replace my mother. No one ever will. She was a perfect mother. She did things so like, even just her fight was just so graceful. She fought gracefully. And that's one of the biggest takeaways I got from what she went through, was the way she fought. She was faith-filled. And so I remember that, and that's one of the big takeaways I get from just watching what she went through. It's like, but she went through this, she did it this way. This is what what women are do well. And so she is a great example. So I hope to just a quarter of the woman she is.
Oh, you are, sis. You are absolutely remarkable. And like, how are you most like Mummy?
That's a good question. I think in her, Mummy was very driven, and I hold my mother to the most highest of a pedestal. She's like the best of everything to me. And so when I say she's driven, and I think I too am driven in certain manners, I have just a little bit of discipline. She was very disciplined. I have a little bit of that. And so, but I think for the most part, I think I have her kindness and just maybe a little bit of
how are you most like her? You're telling me you have a little bit of this.
A little bit. Because to me, my mother, maybe from other people, it's like, I can't even reach just how, to me, in my opinion, I cannot reach the standards that she lived her life, because she was just so serious about life. She was serious. And anything that she did it wholeheartedly. She did it with everything she got. And I don't take life as serious. Not anymore. In the point in my life that I'm in, I'm doing things that I enjoy, things that will make me happy, because I lived for a while not being able to do the things that I wanted to do, live the way I wanted to live. And, and so I don't know. I don't think I'll ever see, like I said, I don't know if I'll ever, I would like to say I have this of her and I have that of her. Maybe it's the humility in me. No, I'm joking, but, but yes, I would say for the most part, it's her drive and so yeah.
Okay. What is your favorite memory with mommy? And if because of what you said about your memories and stuff, if you can't answer that, I can ask you another question.
No, I can answer that. My favorite memory of mommy is when we were younger, she enrolled me in piano lessons. And I hated playing piano. I would never practice. Recital is coming up and, you had to force me. And my mother recognized that and she took up piano lessons. And we took up lessons together. What? How much is reality and how much is fantasy? But I would like to think that she took up those lessons to help me, to just kind of support and be there with me, And so, yeah, we would go and she would be there with my piano teacher. She took lessons.
Yes. You and mommy at the piano place.
She was supportive, yes.
Oh, okay. Love that.
Yeah. But yeah.
So, anyway, this is what I want to ask you. If you could say one thing to mommy right now, what would it be?
I would say thank you. Thank you for giving up so much of yourself to take care of your family. At this point, looking back, I recognize so much of the sacrifices that she had to make just to sustain the family. And I would just say thank you for that and let her know that I do not take for granted the level of love that she's shown her family, recognizing just everything that she had to do. And she did a lot. Like I said, she was educated. She had a PhD. She was going for a master's in nursing, but yet she lost her job, especially during the recession, and that's what led to this second career of nursing. And she was working in places where PhD level women should not be working in, doing things that she had so much more education, but she put all of that aside and did whatever she had to do for her family. And so I would just, tell her thank you and I recognize everything that you did for us. Do not take that for granted at all.
Is there anything else that you would like to share about mommy or about your experience through grief that I haven't asked you yet?
Let's see. There's no lack of good things I can say about her. She is a great woman. She is faith-filled, and I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge just her faith through everything that she went through. She was praying to God for healing. Even when she died, she was still believing for God for a miracle. And even through it all, even through the pain, the suffering, the breakdowns, the in and out of the hospitals, in and out of ICUs. I mean, she went through it all. She still believed in God's promises. And she didn't see that promise fulfilled for her, but it never stopped her from seeking God. She was always seeking God, and she was always reflecting in the Word, and ministry was her purpose in life, and she wanted to teach and wanted just next generations and wanted her life to be a testimony, and wanted to bring people to God through her, what she was going through and her testimony. And so never gave up, never. And that's one of the things I can take away is that you in this life may not see the promises of God, but that is what faith is doing the work even though you don't see the end result. And so yes, I thank God for her example of life and how she lived her life, and the testimony that she has for the people that came across her, the family that she built here in Michigan at Redeemed Church here, Mountain of the Lord in Michigan. I think she touched a lot of people here, and so thank God for that.
Thank God indeed. Yeah. That's powerful what you said about her not giving up and, continuing to believe in God's promises, even with what she was going through. And when you say that, I just think about how, like, I've heard when people are going through something like cancer and, something that is such that takes such a big toll on your body, how, like, your spirit has so much to do with your, like, healing.
Yeah.
And so do you believe you can be healed? Do you have the whatever? And so just to know that she had all of that, and obviously, it didn't end the way that we were praying and, she was praying, but to know that she still had that hope and she still had that faith through the journey gives me comfort, because, like, you hear other stories of, yes, people giving up, and I don't blame them, because I'm like, when your body is going through all that, like, so yeah, it's very inspirational to know that, and it's also convicting, because it's always, when people would ask me, like, what inspires you, I used to give the response, like, people who have been through really hard things, who are, still bringing light, and can somehow, like, still encourage people and look at life through a positive lens when they're going through such hard things. And I can't imagine much harder than cancer.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, like, it is convicting, because I be wanting to throw away my faith, and I be wanting to cling to the prayers that weren't answered as my evidence to not trust God anymore, because look what he didn't do.
Right.
But yeah, like, Big Mommy didn't do that. And, like,
she never did that. Never. That was, I think she never gave up. She never gave up on God.
So who am I, So that is honestly very inspiring to me. So thank you for sharing that. And yeah, I know my parents look forward to going to that church every year and, just honoring her legacy and going and serving that church. And so, yeah, just to know that she did build such a strong community there is amazing.
And I think that was needed for her. And, everything, God knows what he's doing, because he will put the right people, it puts you in the right place at the right time. And that's what it was. Even, one of her really good friends, it was just a random meeting, and they just kind of, and that was the woman that introduced her to that church, and the pastor saw her through many of dark days. And so God really does put people in your life to help you go through things, because she did not do it alone. And you know what? Before we close, I want to give a shout out to your mom, because there is one particular time where, and at the beginning of her diagnosis, and she was in, I think it was neuro ICU, my mother, and they were thinking there was some brain related issue, if it was an infection or something, but my mom was out and she was in the ICU. And your mom, she got on the plane and was there like the next day. And so for a while, we weren't seeing anything change with my mom's condition. But the moment your mother touched down, she came into the hospital and she took over the room, was praying, didn't leave my mother's side, was reading. All my mom was hearing was, even though she wasn't coherent, but your mom came, and the moment she came, you saw things turning around.
Uh-huh.
And it wasn't, and
I was shouting.
Look, and it was like, it was immediate, but it was gradual, because if she did not show up when she did, your mother, things could have gone the other way. But when your mom came, was reading the scripture, everything my mom was hearing was just of the word of God. And it was a turn around, and day by day, she was getting better to the point now. I mean, they took off the restrictions off of her, and she was able to talk and speak, and it was your mother who did that. And it was just so profound, and you really saw how God moves. And that was one of the miraculous healings that my mother had. And so I want to thank Auntie for just, taking her time out to get on a plane and fly to Michigan, be there to my mother's side and speak healing into her.
Thank you for sharing that. Shout out to you, Mom. Okay, so we are nearing the end of the interview, and I have a few questions I like to ask all my guests, centering around grace being number one. So how are you giving yourself grace, or how have you given yourself grace through this process of grief?
I give myself grace, I think, through forgiveness. Of course, like I said, I talk about things that I could have done better. But at the end of the day, I just have to forgive myself, because I did things the way I knew how to do it with the things that I had. And so if I had to do it all over again, I would. Hindsight is 2020. And so I would definitely do some things differently. But forgiveness, I forgive myself for some of the things that I did and did not do. So,
You better. I love that. Yeah. What is something you're proud of yourself for? Because you have a lot to be proud of. But
at this moment, I'm proud of this doctorate. So I'm proud of the way that I handled Mommy's passing. It was only by the grace of God who gave me, because literally my prayer at that time was comfort, peace, and strength. It was simple prayers, and all I did was I asked God for those things, and He gave those things to me. And so I'm proud of never losing that relationship, and I have a different experience with just my journey, in that I never really question, why God? Like, why, Lord? Why would you do this? In my opinion, who am I to question God? God doesn't do things on the level that and there's no understanding. And even if he were to tell me why, what am I going to do with the information? You know? And so it's like, it's like one of those things is like, why am I even questioning you now? Now it's just like, okay, how can I move forward? And how can I make my mother proud? And so, and I think just to me, recognizing that, moving on in a way that I think my mother would appreciate, that's what I'm proud of. And so I pray that I continue to make her proud with the decisions that I make, with where I take my life, and it's a continual prayer to as long as I walk this earth. So
I'm proud of you too.
Thank you.
What about today, 2024? How do we support IJ? What does IJ need? That is it just prayer? Is it
continued prayer? Yes, continued prayer. And you guys, and you're asking that, it's like you guys do a lot, anyways. You guys, your family is a strong spiritual family, and your parents always tell me how much they're praying for me every day, and I feel it. Yes. And so I know. So, I mean, you guys are doing it, so I can't really add to whatever, because you guys are already doing it. And I'm grateful for you guys, family. I feel the love each and every day. I just thank God for you guys.
I thank God for you. I'm blessed that we're family. And like when Lolu passed, you were staying with us for a little while, and you got me this amazing gift that I just hold so dear, and it's this like crystal
frame pictures.
And then you got me this book by C.S. Lewis called A Grief Observed, which I've opened a few times and read a few lines of.
Take your time. There's no timeline.
Yeah, just that outpouring of support and those gifts can only come from somebody who knows. Who knows to expect it. So, love you and appreciate you. And I definitely feel that we have gotten closer just in the last, 4 or 5 years.
Yes.
So I'm looking forward to that continuing. And the way I like to end every podcast is just us together, reminding the folks that there's grace for that. So if you are a caretaker, for a sick loved one, there's grace for you. If you are encountering a sickness yourself, there's grace for you. If you are questioning your faith due to, one thing or another, there's grace for you. And everybody listening, there's
grace for that.